Vivian. Thanks, Vivian, for joining. Early morning, you've taken us time for this design community. I hope people will join slowly, but we have to follow time, so we'll just start. So let me introduce first. Vivian is like, I think there are like professionally we meet some people and very quickly we can understand each other, and I think very quickly it is getting beyond professional. We are, I think, I can call good friends, and we are doing a lot of activities together. So thanks, Vivian, once again. It is honor to connect with you, and we have a lot of common interest, and we are doing for user experience community. So Vivian is very well experienced UX guru. He is doing so many activities that it is very, I think, entire UX talk we can, even if his activity we can mention here. But yes, he is a very actively in a lot of fields. So he's a founder of a human factor research and design. So he's a director, member of board director of UXQCC Austria, well for startups, design UX mentor. So many things he is doing, and continuously he's adding more activities, features, and this is very again good. Chat, so I will take those questions. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Tushar. I know this is an international audience that comes, but in Marathi, I always consider you like Bhava, which means brother, which has grown out of so many things that we've done together. Thank you so much for having me and this opportunity to work with you. You're much larger than what I'm doing at all. Anyway, so one of the most important things that we've been facing we always feel there is a user experience user somewhere, and we are agnostic of that. Not really. We'll cover some of these topics. Feel free to stop me anytime. There is no set pattern that we have to go through slide by slide. There are few slides there to support and a story to tell you. But overall, there is it's a discussion. Feel free to stop me at any time. Okay. So
sure.
Having said that, can you see my screen? I'm going to share some
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. So, sustainability and UX in the age of generative AI. Big word, okay? Tell me something. How's the weather? How's the weather looking there today in Pune? Anybody?
It is hot.
It is hot. Yeah, and how was the rain?
Yeah, it is very hot today.
Yeah, winter was good in Pune. The weather-wise, how is the weather-wise over there? I'm sorry, I'm not able to.
Yes.
If you look at the things that are happening year over year, this is some images of Europe from 2017 and 18, But if you look at overall, lands are changing. Our Mumbai floods, for example, I say our because I spent 10 years in Mumbai. This was a common story. It wasn't that so 10 years, 15 years ago. So this is actually a crisis. You know, the situation of the weather and how things are changing, if you've not noticed at all. I grew up in the same city that Tushar is right now in, and we used to have we used to not have fans in too many of the houses. That's how simply it was well known for its weather, Pune, like Bangalore. But now, of course, Bangalore, Mumbai, Pune, everywhere we have seen, and so also around the world. So this is not fine, right? So there's too many things around the world, and am I supposed to be responsible for it as a UX designer? As somebody in our team says, maybe yes, maybe no. There is certain guidelines set aside to control this, and if you have heard about, there is, United Nations has given us these sustainable goals. If you really look at, I'm not going to read all 17 of them, but there is a majority of them focused on environment, climate, climate action, life above water, life below water, and so on. So there is a responsibility, and also they interconnect. All the 17, if you look at it, they interconnect. That is why they are all about sustainability. Business cannot thrive if the world is falling apart, right? Like wars, for example, or the heating up of the earth and things like that. It'll take you back in time, okay? Let's go back in time a little bit, some time ago. Maybe you've seen this because with the internet, information and access and the overload of data is so much that probably you've seen many of the things that we'll talk about. But have you heard about the Autoped? It was the first electric scooter long time ago. It was built by this inventor. His name was Arthur Hugo Gibson, and he wanted to push things further. So there were already, the battery operated bicycles and things like that. So he said, why not make a motorized scooter? And he built that. It was an innovation, 1916, roughly costing about $100 then, which is equivalent to about $3,000 today, approximately. There are certain of those samples still around, but what's the point of this? Did that tech reach any sustainable level over time? We've heard about the similar phase, right? Look at the way scooters turned out finally. They may be not popular so much in certain regions, but they were very, very popular here. And every nook and corner, you literally see a pile of them. And finally, what happened to them? The bird flew away. Not literally the bird, but the sustainable transportation system that was made. It even polluted the waters and the nature around them. But you'll say, okay, that's hardware. I'm a UX designer. I design screens. Well, how has the app served? Has the app served any purposes, or has it impacted? You may or may not see the impact immediately, but there is. Sorry, I have to fade it out because it's a protected software. Of course, you can make out what that software would be doing. That's about how the app was supporting. So it was supposed to be sustainable, but on neither side of that there was a impact of the kind that we expected. So digital carbon footprint is very, very hard to ignore. Though we may not think about it, each area that we look out for, like internet search, songs that you play, videos that you stream, messages, emails, posts, so many, right? Content creation is big now, and it is adding to hardware, software, and toxic electronic waste, digitally or otherwise also. You say, oh no, but I deleted, I have kept that, I have these files or things like that. If you look at your life itself on your phone, on your your computers, on your drives online, the amount of data. Not that after this call suddenly people will start deleting things or removing, but let's look at how is that impact, how we surround it. So just moving down in the history of things. So tech companies have a lot to address, including us as designers that we add to it. Sustainability is about transparency. What we don't see, we think that it is not impact, but what we don't see is always has the higher impact. Simple thing like the Wi-Fi in your house, you can't see it, but without that you can't live it. All your hardware is useless, right? So it's very important that to understand uh, the invisible also, and this is going to be some effort to share with you. So human experiences, not just the user, but all human stakeholders. UX is a collective effort. If you think, if we ever make that mistake of saying, I'm a UX designer and it's they, them, who, all that, that's a mistake we make. So first of all is to ground ourselves in reality. Is who am I? I'm not an individual. I'm a part of a collective, and that's where the responsibility gets distributed. And because it's collective and it's responsibility of everyone, there has to be some measurable outcomes, right? So the moment you have some numbers, then like Tushar always says, use without UX research, there is no UX, right? Tushar, you always say that.
Hello.
Uh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I also believe with you, and so also many of us believe. And yesterday, Jared Spool, the famous UX leader, was saying that don't misunderstand that only by numbers point of view. There are other areas. This is not what he's saying, but generally from the sustainability point of view, you can measure environmental impact. There is something called environmental impact assessment. There is sustainability reporting and so on. There are many things you can search, what these mean. But more so, it be about your supply chain of your design, of your UX design. What do you mean by supply chain of UX design? It's not just your Figma files and your assets and things like that. There are behind the scene, as I said, what is not visible, right? The data centers, the cloud infrastructure, the software development, all of these come to is where the investment comes in understanding and making sure that there is lesser energy costs, lesser greenhouse gas emissions from these huge solar, some of them are solar or wind turbine based cooling systems that companies use to power their data centers. It's humongous. We'll come to that on why your electricity, your all of these. So if you look at the areas I'm talking about, there is hardware, software, impact, and you'll say, okay, this is like going too much on my head. No problem. Let's just hold on to that thought of confusion, which is deliberately I want to just park that in your head, and it's all moving around like neurons firing all over the place. ये काय बोलतोय? I mean, in Marathi said, what is this fellow talking about? Anyway, so just holding on to that thought, it's important to understand the futuring of experience sustainability. I've removed the word user from there because experience, as I said, is a collective. So it's important to put people in the center of design, technology, and progressive development. What is progressive development here? We all know generative AI, for example. The idea of quantifying that number becomes important. And then this approach should go beyond traditional sustainability practices, like recycling plastic, for example, and all this. That's one part of it. But we'll see how that impact comes to us. Now, we'll say, okay, just into the speech in few seconds. मैं क्या करेगा इसको सब जान के, right? What am I supposed to do with this information? Well, it is a shift in mindset, which is what we need to look at as a designer. Are we asking the right questions? This is not meaning research related. It's about understanding that every pixel counts. Are you counting the impact it makes? Every input for that matter also counts. Let's look at some numbers, okay? If you just look at people using active internet, this is figures from January, by the way. 5.16 billion. 1 million is 10 lakhs in Indian numbers. So 100 lakhs is 100 lakhs is 1 billion, right? No, that is 10 million. So 100 million would become 1 billion. That's the number. And look at the number of people. Now, the amount of phones and the connections being sold, I'm sure this number has gone up to 5 plus number of users, 5 plus billion people users around. This is from Statista. You can look that up. What is so if so many people are looking at it, what is the carbon impact of a search on your phone or your computer or whatever it may be? Okay. The top search engines produce somewhere around 16,200 kilograms. I'm not so good with pound and kg conversion immediately. So just to share with you, in just 30 seconds, 16,200 kilograms of CO2 is released just by a simple search. Now, if you pull out your phone and just scan this QR code, you'll know just by opening the browser, Google search, for example, whatever it is showing you, it will show you the impact. Okay, take a few seconds and try this out. You could send your thumbs up or hands or some emoji to say that you tested it. Tried it? We'll move forward. Now let's see, how about just website views? Views, I'm not talking about interaction. Let's say you created something and you want people to be using so many other methods. You want people to just hook and view, which you see so often, right? Yeah, I'm just talking about website view, the carbon footprint. A site with 1 million views, just 1 million views, produces, hold on, 1,000 kilograms. Now, if you look at the sites now, if you go to YouTube, Instagram, even LinkedIn, everywhere, all people are fighting for views. All influencers, content creators, everybody's fighting for views, and see the impact. Now, if you think about it, it's an overwhelming amount of number just for viewing, that continuous scrolling people are doing on the phone. It's not going to stop. It's just an awareness. Okay, let's move to calculating something else which is easy for many of us working people. If there are some children and students who are not into it, they also have some relationship to it, but working professionals have a lot to do with that. That's about emails. Do emails generate any CO2? 1 MB of email brings about roughly 19 grams of CO2 it releases. If you multiply that number by, say, 5 people in a company, a startup, for example, and as many people working days in a company, not counting the weekends, you arrive at something like 23,750 grams of CO2. That is more than 23 tons of CO2 just by a startup of 5 people. And now imagine our IT centers and Hinjewadi, for example, in Pune, or IT parks around. How many tons and tons of outcomes must be coming? Should we stop using email? Not really. But there are ways. Let me just tackle this email thing for a minute and to show you how you can reduce the environmental impact of the experience you have with your email, just your mails. So, you need to ask yourself, first of all, simple things. I'll give you some 5 points here. Once you have decided that your company has some sustainability practices, these are some awareness that you can put for yourself. For example, ask yourself, is it really necessary for me to send that email? Sometimes we just could maybe probably talk to a person, walk across, or things like that. Attachments, the reason people tell you not to attach big, huge attachments, because it puts the load on. So if you put it down on a cloud, it's much easier to download at that, because it doesn't go through the chain of post response sending that happens in between. They are so when you send an email, it's not directly going. Like, say, if I send a mail to Tushar, it will go through a routing, just like post office, where there is a forward system in the middle. So all of these take time, and nowadays, of course, with the speed and bandwidth, it goes very fast. Others, it takes time. You must have come across when you talk about, hey, did you get my mail? No, it's still not come. Refresh. Basically, you're pulling in, or you're kind of initiating actions on the servers there. One of the other things you could do is unsubscribe from all unnecessary newsletters and mails that are not required. So what could be a useless mail, like junk, for example? Drafts that are sitting for 4-5 years, 2-3, or a few months ago, unsubscribing and clearing all of that. You should attend the co-founder of HFR&D, Sabina's session on declutter, because she explains this thing in much better way than me about how to reduce your digital clutter. Anyway, delete useless mails for sure, and avoid copying everybody. Not really required. It's a habit even I used to have, copying everybody on the email and then sending that through. Anyway, that was a quick one just on emails. But today's times, how can anyone not talk about this? I hear you. I mean, you have not said anything, but in your mind, you will be thinking, generative AI, where is that gone? Chat GPT. Without ChatGPT, today's slides and programs are of no use, right? Everyone loves to use this and play around. In fact, there are waiting lines for the free users. And did you know that, and of course, the answer is right down below there, which is the meaning of ChatGPT's pre-trained transformers, which is using natural language processing on a huge database of text, websites, images, whatever has been taught to it till 2021. That's why it's called a
Right.
large language model. Hmm? So, how much CO2 do you think ChatGPT is responsible for in a day? So, if you just make a simple prompt of 45 characters, just to give you an overview, 145 characters, which is like for tweet, for example, you can and probably add an image from DALL-E or Midjourney. It brings out something to the tune of 10 to 30 metric tons of CO2. Just some mathematical calculation. You can use ChatGPT to ask this question also and get the answers that you want. Don't do it right now. So if you have 1 million queries, now you know that there are 100 million plus people looking at ChatGPT at all times, and there is a wait time. So 10 to 30 metric tons of CO2 is released just by that one tweet that you may do. Now people are releasing books, and the plugin has been bought. The purchase one, the numbers are staggering. I don't have those counts. So 30. This is just some more metrics of what ChatGPT can generate. This is from the data source Chris Poynton had put together after doing some research. What you have to take away from here to understand how much it impacts the environment. For example, just the GPT-3, it consumed 936 megawatts of electricity, which is able to power about 1,123 homes for a month. How is that connected to you as a designer? Because it's part of the circular economy, human being, right? So if you look at it, there is a famous book called Technofix, that technology cannot fix the problems it creates. So nature is circular. We need to learn from that. For example, if you look at a fruit peel, when you throw it in the ground, what happens? Or when you see it's not a really good example. When a dead animal, you see it decomposes, becomes mud, and recycles itself. That's how nature has been built by God to address the way of recycling and sustaining. But we haven't really done that. The banana peel we discard, I told you, it can generate into new, really nice compost for plants, and then it can add value. But our habits, how are they adding to it? There's a famous movie called Plastic Ocean, where we don't see it, but it has been a great impact. You can look for it online. Shows you some staggering number of impact that it has done. If you looked at how data centers have been evolving, there was a time Microsoft or one of these big companies had submerged the entire data center because the heat it generates into a sea, into the ocean near Netherlands, as an experiment. Similarly, lots of energy consumption or cooling effects on these hardware and systems is being planned. It's just one way of looking at the natural ways to reverse the harm. But if you look at, again, back to LLMs, we have to use them, these large language models like ChatGPT. I'll quickly go through this. You don't really have to worry about it so much, but think about it, compressing large data models, for example. How are you contributing as a designer from the point of view of how much information that you add there? Let's say, for example, a simple thing like LinkedIn, when you use, everybody uses, I use it a few times a day myself. There is this impact that it creates. Now, how is it designed, and what are the areas that it can help you understand that when I design a website, is it eco-sustainable or no? It's very important for a user experience designer or a designer to know. So, for example, again, I ask you to pull out your phone. check your favorite website, whichever website you have. How eco-sustainable is your website? You'll come to know from this quick experiment. You can save it and refer it back later in course of time. But practices such as this, that you can make energy efficient websites. The use of black, for example, it is not utilizing that much energy. It has sustainable way of reducing the impact of resources that it's been using. There are many websites like EcoGrader, Digital Beacon, withcabin.com, and so on, which you can use to figure out whether your practices are sustainable or no from a design point of view. To control the impact your product makes, it's very important on how you can design. For example, as a designer, the minimal that you can start with is creating low impact, low carbon images. For example, SVG, ASCII, or a CSS pattern, removing extra metadata from an image. The old format base64, very, very important, very easy to use. And make sure that it has a underlying principles that you're sharing with your team also on utilization of, say, images, or for example, we talked about carbon emission, join some communities, and so on. And making sure that things are not unnecessarily adding to the user experience area of the impact that it's being made. So dark modes, when they came up, is because of reducing the energy utilization of your phone. Battery heats up. Have you seen your phone heating up unnecessarily? It's because the amount of resources that it needs to process the data. So if your website design, your product design is optimized, restructured well, the media that you're using inside, and help move to a greener host, for example, your host also makes a difference. If you look at Google up some server host and what kind of infrastructure they're using, you'll come to know the amount of energy that it utilizes. Also, in your design for a website, for example, it's important to use caching. Browsers normally do it, but caching kind of helps you not to reload the same thing and help save that much more. So work together with developers to do that. And the number of iterations, that's the last big takeaway, because the number of iterations that we do in designing, we're just loading. If you look at your Figma file, for example, there are so many thousands. Sometimes I get shocked to see, there are like 60, 70, or even up to 100 different iterations that the designers have tried, but there is only one being shown for a purpose. So you can always archive and put them, there is offline versions of things to do. So instead of loading them up on the server all the time, especially things that are not required. I'll give you some, simple 5 sustainability goals for UX from that point of view. Put them all up right now for you. So one is scrutinize the first one, scrutinize the challenge, the traditional thinking that is there. Consider ethical, social, environmental aspects. Use design thinking to ideate. Don't have to continuously go on digital to solve. Keep people in a one ecosystem, and have an approach that helps research that, study or research that, create a knowledge database, speculate, kind of go through those discussions, individuals, community, society, and so on. Always, number one thing, we learn that from Dieter Rams also, simplify. It's very important to simplify things so that they're for a longer period of time. Any questions here, Tushar?
Yeah, I will ask. So just
Okay, yeah.
I don't want to disturb your
continue.
Yeah.
The last one being to sustain. So it's very important that your design sustains itself. Constantly having iteration. You look at your mobile phone, and you look at the app refresh. Version refreshes. Sometimes it's staggering that the amount of refreshes that an app needs. So think about releases. Don't go after feature and functionality release as a priority. Effectiveness, and really people are asking for it, or are we pushing the features for people to like? Sometimes it's a vicious cycle that keeps on going. either like for example, the sprint cycles that we have in our development that designers also work with. The hurry to release a sprint or release a product feature to the world is it takes unnecessary amount of pressure from the people. At the same time, there is another, in 2 weeks another version is changed. Sometimes it's almost every week that that startups and new apps see refreshes happening. So if you can reduce that load, you are building that last sustainable practice. Remember this 5 principles. So scrutinize, study, speculate, simplify, and sustain, which will take you through. I'll take you through two simple things that are. There are case studies. One is how some organization like Nike is addressing. There are all these 7 steps, but the two main areas Nike addressed was design and make. The rest are all in between. That means it's very important a company of that repute is taking collective decision and something that they have built called the Nike Sustainable Index. I won't go through the whole index, but just to show you that right from the beginning, if you look at it, it's chemistry, energy, water, physical waste, all of that. Now, what has that got to do with the clothes or the shoes or whatever Nike products that you're using makes, including the app or a couple of other things? If you look at it from the root itself, when you, let's say you open a Figma file and you're creating, that's your root, or you're using some system to a mural or a FigJam or whatever tool you're using, your planning stages, organizing your planning stages, base material that you can give some score to it, learning from this Nike experience. Then the other things that you keep on doing unnecessarily, like lots of screenshots, lots of online time research which is just going forever and there is no outcome coming, those all add to the waste. So what is the contribution, environmental contribution that you're doing? You're not making shoes, but you're definitely utilizing image libraries, you're using codes, you're using design systems. Even in the design system, sometimes I've seen a massive design system with only maybe 1 or 2 components or maximum 3 components. Let's say, for example, onboarding or login or simple search related apps that you see these days. You don't really need all of those humongous amounts of material design copy pasted into your Figma component library because it's a waste. So making sure that those are there. Then supply practices. Now you can read this as stakeholder alignments, because each stakeholder will have something dependent on the designer's outcome. So look through these and build up your own score, something like this. Based on Nike's sustainability index, you can build your own UX sustainability index for your teams. Here is the link to the PDF. You can download this and read it later if you don't remember. Just scan this and keep it safe with you. Okay, there's another company called Monday.com, very well known for its green practices that it evolved recently. Sometime in the last year, they had the Earth Day mission, April 22, exactly a year ago, or roughly about a year ago. And they challenged developers around the world to build the best sustainability practices. They released that, and each winning entry was to address flight climate change, and they are all design related areas, or what do you call, how people address. And the climate hours is the winner one. You can scan the QR code to learn more if you like to know. What Monday did on a shorter call there was to make sure that your ERP practices that are there, or whatever productivity you're using Monday.com for, shows you the background information of what the environmental impact is going to be, like the processing, the tickets that are raised, the scheduling that you do, your calendar, your email, your processes, whatever you follow, and build that into the awareness of the software. Then people then work on it on a responsible manner from that point of view. I know I've been running through this because I want to close these slides and share with you not so breaking news, of course. 2 days ago, Google I/O was finished. We also had the ADP list day, and lots of people were online, right? So I'll give you a Google I/O summary in short, which is a lot of all these.
AI, generative AI, generative AI, generative AI, AI as AI, 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 AI. It uses AI to bring AI, 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 AI.
So that's how important
Right.
AI is, whether you accept it or not. This, of course, is a funny meme that's been circulating and probably you've already seen it. But it's very important. What did I take you through? I took you through, autopilot example, the impact on the weather. How was your weather? I asked you at the beginning, right? So if you look at it all through, we are responsible as UX designers, as people who I believe that we orchestrate the requirements people have. If somebody has a problem and you need a solution, we work with various stakeholders, and as Nike said, design and make, which is putting you're thinking it through it, strategizing, making prototypes, wireframes, all the process that you follow. You have many stakeholders that you meet, and then finally you hand off to the user to use. But everybody is involved over there in that life cycle of tools. So AI is a tool from that point of view, generative AI. It has a huge impact. So blindly using and spending hours and hours on them is good, but to look at it as a focus from impact that you're creating. So just to leave you on that note, I don't want to talk much about myself, but I'm involved with a few activities around. Feel free to connect with me at any time. We'll move to Q&A from here and discussion with Tushar, which is the second part of this presentation. And I'm going to stop sharing.
I think, thanks, Vivian. This is very insight. Some people have, I think, listening. This is very first time, and very first, your one of the slides says, as a designer, what is my role in here? So same question, just to more that the people coming from a typical design background. So because we never think in this respect, because our job is like open Photoshop in first, end with a Photoshop, or sometimes we are just bother about or how my delivery manager pushing me to send me update. And even we talk about UX maturity, UX processes. So how you think, okay, how we can integrate in say mid-sized companies, or maybe in big companies we have a team, someone can monitor, but now how it's very low budget company and where they want to integrate this thing. So what is your suggestion?
My suggestion, it's the same. If you remember the slide I had talked about, I know it must have passed by. It's the mindset change. So even if you're a single, I'll tell you my own example. When I started working, I was the only designer in a company of 4 people. My two managing directors, they were 2 because they were partners, and one accountant, and me, and then one sales guy joined a month after I joined. Thousands of people in India used to use the product I used to design. It was called vintage cards, Hallmark cards. I used to design greeting cards and gifts and things like that. So the mindset was such a. Why am I bringing that example? Is to understand how much can I do. You have that many hours in a day, right? So sometimes what happens is our overwhelms makes us irresponsible for the actions we take. What am I saying here? For example, nobody's watching and let's say I'm taking a 2-wheeler example. Nobody's watching and you're going on a road and it says no entry. Are you tempted to go and cross it? Nobody's watching me and this is a shortcut. Or going on the footpaths, sometimes in Pune we see, or going on the no entry, breaking the rules for no reason. But if you look at it, what name does it bring to the city or the place, or the rule breaking that happens as a habit at large by other people? Because somebody is watching you, they are learning from you, and so on. So when your mindset is about, oh, who's watching me, or it doesn't matter, and if you look back at your own, open your Explorer and look at how organized are you, how well have you structured your work files. So do you really want to go, and how many tabs have you got to open there? 50, 60, 100. These little practices will save. One is your resources, because you're a small company. You want to make sure that your computer runs faster. You don't have all the processing powers. If you have reduced those requirements, like for example, in JJ School of Art, Tushar, whatever the examples you gave, you should not have so many tools, right? 2, 3 brushes, maybe a few pencils. That's the traditional world. Similarly, even in the digital, we don't have to have, like, every day there are AI, generative AI tools being released. You don't need to subscribe to all of them and get overwhelmed and try to use them and reach nowhere. So as a practice, limit yourself to 1 or 2 tools, limit yourself to the amount of data you're consuming, and spend more time hands-on to try these things out. That okay, I have a well-organized system. I'm using just the basic tools that are required. I'm not saying don't learn, but if you schedule that time correctly, and do a good productivity hack of your lifestyle in a day, doing some habit forming activities, you can achieve a good sustainable practice. Sustainable practice
Definitely.
is not just about the environment. If you look at all the goals, it's also about well-being and education.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But one next question would be like, how, yes, we will try to practice ourselves to for this our better, but sometimes this is more business side. And always talk about UX and ROI. So how we can convince this thing to our customers, and because end of the day, it is like they want to put on cloud server and they want to use infrastructure. It is not, it is basically not our call. It is like customer want to put big infrastructure, but we try to convince them. So what are few tips, like, how we can make understand, because this is entirely something what now today what we are discussing. It is, I'm not sure everyone actually know the gravity, what is the seriousness in future, because I still remember in, in college days, we have very standard question for when I used to zoology every time, like, when Antarctica will melt, and everyone there's a global warming, but still I think 20 years, I think same question is there.
It is there too.
And actually I was waiting, Acha, kab Antarctica is going to melt, and when whatever I used to write lot of 20 answers, 20 pages answer for just for global warming.
Correct.
But eventually it has impact. See, it is climate change is there. It is on our doorstep. But to
Yeah.
convince the stakeholders, it is a big challenge, I think. So what is your suggestion in, or what tips you,
So first of all,
where
in 20 years, your voice is getting cut. So first of all, in 20 years, roughly, if you take Antarctica and Arctic Ocean, both the North and the South Pole, the size of Maharashtra is already melted out. More than that, already melted out. But you can't see it. Remember, I said you can't see it, so its impact is not known. So I would say don't try to convince your customers, because they are not going to be able to understand. It is our responsibility. I'll give you a simple analogical example, in an analogy. When you order something online, you have no idea what the supply chain route and how is it coming, what are the pains that the person goes through, or how the product is manufactured. Nothing is being thought about. The phone in your hand, it is just like Apple, for example. Many people just, the shiny thing in their hands, or any product for that matter. You just use it. You never know, even the car that you're using, what is going inside. Do you question it? Do you know how the combustion happens and the petrol breakdown? When you put the key in and you turn it on, you're only looking at that experience part of it. But Tesla came and changed the way electrical cars were being looked at, or the way car itself was being looked at, removed the whole engine from it. EV came into the picture, right? EV came into the picture, and the question keeps rotating, because as you innovate and go progressive growth, there will be things that people won't be happy about. There are points like the famous example of Henry T. Ford. When he removed the horses, people said, "Oh, how is this going to happen?" Or if he said, "If I ask people, they'll say add more horses." So either this way or that way, there is going to be a problem situation, right? So I would say you don't need to tell the suggestions, but you can make that impact through your delivery. optimization, or making requirements itself that uses lesser amount of resources and things on the cloud
Right.
side. By all means, use, for example, use the API given. For example, I'll do the ChatGPT one. You can choose to go to ChatGPT and try to subscribe and add to the carbon footprint of ChatGPT, or use something that is already using the subscribed version of ChatGPT, like say Notion AI, and you may be knowing so many because you're a good user of generative AI, which are, you don't need to subscribe. If you reduce the number of subscriptions and use some other services, it's a collective, right? A car, for example, I give that example many times. The logo is not the car. The tire is from somebody, the meter is from somebody, the seats are from somebody. Everything is from everywhere else, but it's a combined effort, and you see one. There's somebody who has collaborated and put together that one aspect. Similarly is design. You can have a collective effort of optimized servers, green host, systems that are not compromising on the environmental impact, and models that are broken down. Like in generative AI, you don't have to use a large model. You can use a smaller model for a specific purpose. So if you want to change the light bulb, you don't call the construction company, right? You can do it
Right.
yourself, or if it is a little complex, you call one electrician, not Bharat Electric Forge or something like that.
Right.
So
Yeah,
the
I
impact
think
can be made from that point.
right. So as an interaction designer, coming back to a little bit base level, basic understanding. As an interaction designer, so I have two choices. So whether I go for, as you said, reduce tools and try to be more, I think, research, instead of put everything on a digital, we should bring on a, I think with real person, that will be solved, that one problem. But that is, but also I think if you introduce more automation, so that will in features, I think more automation. So what do you think, that will add more carbon emission, or it is like where going, because
So
what
carbon
technology which you
emission,
are,
yeah. So carbon emission impact is not easy to keep in mind, Tushar, at all times for people. Very difficult. For example, when you're involved in a conversation, let's say you're not you, but generally we see in India and many places, you're at a Pani Puri joint. I'm giving you non-tech examples, and you've eaten over there without thinking. Sometimes, have you seen, you just crush the paper and you throw it out, or plastic, whatever it is. You're not really thinking of the impact. Similarly, digitally is all the more difficult, very difficult for people to know. But if you make conscious decision from the beginning as an interaction designer, that okay, I'm going to use a progressive or a contextual dark mode or light mode of my design, or I'm going to use these components and put certain practices in place. Like for example, when we work in our team, we say, okay, organize your requirements in such a manner that this is my research data, this is, and I'm going to box that also. I'm not going to go endlessly in collecting that. So you're making a conscious decision. There are many people, like I know many friends and people who don't throw paper out, they keep it in their pocket and they come and they sort it out and put it into the respective bins. Similarly, digitally also you can do. You can keep your image libraries, optimize minimum, your icons, your fonts, your typography. Decide all of these things. Many designers make the mistake of just opening Figma, as you know, and start designing. Open Photoshop, start designing, or Illustrator, or download hundreds of things from online
right.
libraries free and use one or two. So the conscious efforts that a designer can do.
Yeah. I think correctly you are saying, like, as in accessibility also, it is like in a mindset.
Yes.
So I think correctly you are mentioning that from, I think, very beginning, you should start thinking that, yes, I have to follow this thing. And I think you have to make some protocols, some processes, I think, uh, that can be fine-tuned, because I have seen even, yes, we want to follow accessibility, but at the end of the project, we are not thinking to follow accessibility at the very beginning level,
It is to be
research
yeah,
base.
you're very right at the beginning. For example, that other thing we do uh, is the image optimization and data optimization that we think about changing. Many times designers are responsible, no, let's change the whole design. When we used to work at HP Savvy, and we started from the 20 plus years ago, we would make one increment, just one button change over maybe few years. Because if you look at, I'll tell you one simple example. If you have PowerPoint or any of Microsoft Office applications, any of them, and anybody listening also can try this. There's some feature called Find Replace. Have you seen that? Find Replace. The screen Find Replace. Try it now also. It has not changed in the last 30-40 years since whenever Microsoft came. Because that it's not required to redesign. Why should you waste the effort of Find Replace? It is exactly the same in all my history of when I've been using Microsoft application. Microsoft is very powerful. They own, they have paid for ChatGPT and all of these large learning models and all of that. But still, that little screen called Find Replace is still the same. That means there is a decision maker, the designer, who's saying, I don't really need to force myself. So taking that example, do we really need to change the screen? Like first time in a new company and you see, you want to change the login screen. Why? Or you want to change the dashboard, or you want to bring something else. You're moving from one industry to the other. You really don't need to. If people are used to a good practice, like handle on the door. How many people think, oh, this is a handle, I have to grab it like this, I have to turn it. You don't think at all. You don't even. It's invisible design almost, right? Steps on a building. Do you think, okay, this is step one, I have to calculate this much is my feet, then I'll put my next feet. You don't think these things. So your design also should have that, becoming invisible and becoming part and parcel of life. Then you're taking responsibility of moving towards conscious decision of sustainability.
Yeah, great. Please, if you have any question, please put in the chat. So because I know we can literally talk endlessly on this thing, and it is. I don't want to. When is very wake up early morning for us. He's joining from US, so I know Saturday morning, so it's like weekend for. No, it's Friday. Sorry, sorry, Saturday. What I'm doing? It's a bit confused today. Yeah. Yes. If you have a question, please put in a chat so we can have a small discussion. So I have one more question. So it is like to ask one more question. But see, it is okay that as a I can say as a progressive designer, we are thinking like we want to introduce this awareness and everything. But at many times we have to do this thing for like very grassroots level, right? From small things we can and start awareness things, and slowly I think in future definitely people will start thinking and so what do you think? What is our future in this respect? I want both because from India perspective, how how Indian mindset about sab kuch badal dunga. No, it is like one. I still remember some clients they I want everything. I want to change everything. From just wait for some time. And even internationally, now you are all over the globe. How you see the difference? All are the same people like the thought process or what should we can do for this?
It's a good question, Tushar, and I would say let's learn from our leaders and ecosystems around us. If you look at all the people who have built anything sustainable for that longevity, for example, and one of the godfathers of that, and I really appreciate and wish him longer life, is Dieter Rams. Don't create waste. He says, good design is not to have. I mean, he's got all the 10 principles. If you put that in a nutshell, don't create waste. If you look at humanity-centered approach to what we're doing, nothing happened over time. You look at a seed, we learn from nature, from what God has created. You cannot put a seed and tomorrow, let's say mango seed, if you put tomorrow, you can't get Alfonso mangoes or whatever mangoes to eat from there. It takes time. So any change that also we want to make, it's a progressive, incremental number of steps to achieve that goal. This world, like, after like say a few 50, 60 years, 100 years, whatever, we don't know. We may not be here. Our children will be there managing this world. So as the famous saying goes, we are basically on borrowed time. And we have the responsibility of holding this, this position that we have to transition it to the next generation in a better manner. We received it from but we messed up the world, not understanding the impact and not conscious. Whether it's India or US or Europe or wherever in the world it may be, everywhere there are conscious decisions. There was a slide I had removed. It has to do about how people are made aware to sort their kachra in the house, that is your garbage. And Beethoven, some nice music van comes in Korea, in Taiwan particularly. And people just by the music, they know that the vehicle is coming, they'll bring with their separate things and they'll put it and do. It's a mindset change that government did. Now, of course, that practice is in India. In Bangalore, I know that the collector comes, they put some bell or they make a sound and people come and do it. That's one small drop. But if you look at it from the whole perspective of futuring, it is all going to happen with incremental. We have to change our mindset that everything don't have to do. Changes. Any change you see, even our vehicles, our systems around us, they have happened over time. Like I told you the HP example. We changed one button for many years, it will remain. That little screen you see, we were part of that project too. We made a fair impact on it. Sabina and we used to work at the same company then. Even till today, you see the screen on the printer, right? It hasn't changed with 2 buttons on the side or 3 buttons or whatever buttons. That is sustainable design. If you look at Dieter Ram's work, or if you look at Bang & Olufsen, the company which makes premium speakers, they have that cradle to cradle kind of scoring. So if you achieve that, it is difficult for the company because it puts more pressure. Logitech is another company which says that okay, to manufacture that Logitech device, what is the carbon footprint? It's bringing awareness. So when you do this little, like for example, do you really need another mouse? Do you need another phone? I'm using this Google Pixel 4. It's very old model, but it works, does all my job. I don't really need to go for another new shiny phone.
Yeah.
Because it
So
makes
I always say funny way. I still use Samsung, but sometimes, why not you buy Apple phone? So I know, so when Mugdha will call, he will not sound like Lata Mangeshkar. So I know my wife is calling. So why I need that phone? So I think it's a good point you are raising it.
Yeah.
Great. I think yes, I think this topic is very interesting and we can talk very endlessly on this. I hope participants will have a very new insight about what, as a designer, how we can contribute and how we can change as a future. Once again, thanks Vivian for lovely discussions and time for. And please do connect with on LinkedIn and everything. So
yeah, please share
again,
with it.
thanks.
Thank you so much for your patience and time. Yeah. Bye-bye.
Sure. So soon we will come up with some new topic and UX talk. We can have interesting subject and we'll discuss on that. Great.
Surely.
Great. Thanks everyone for studying. Bye. Take care.